In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to give advice, but we are not going to say should. We're not going to use ought to. We're not going to say you had better. In today's lesson, we are going to use an advanced phrase to give advice. Let's go. Now, some of you have probably studied advice. And I think if you've studied advice, you've practiced giving advice using should. Maybe you've watched one of my videos. I have a video where I teach you how to give advice, and we use should. The typical sentence would be you should plus a verb. So, for example, you should study English. You should watch my YouTube videos. In English, should is probably the most common way to give advice. But today, we want to go over a more advanced way to give advice. A more advanced phrase, a phrase that will make you sound more like a native speaker. So in today's lesson, we're not going to use should. We're going to use if I were you, I would. All right, so I'm going to say that again. If I were you, I would. This is a much more advanced way to give advice, and you will sound more like a native speaker if you use this phrase. So, we always use the sentence, if I were you, I would. Then the next word must be a verb. Now, some of you might be thinking, uh-oh, Shelley, you are making a mistake because I'm using the verb were. If I were you. Now, I know in usual past tense, if I use the be verb and if I use I, it's always I was. We don't say I were. But in this sentence, whenever I use an if sentence, I always use the verb were. We never use the verb was. So it's always if I were you, I would plus a verb. Okay, it's always were. So if I were you. Now, if you're traveling in America or Canada, some native speakers will say was. And in conversation, it is okay, kind of. But if you want to speak with proper grammar, it's always were. Okay, so try to remember that. So let's try to make a sentence. First, I'll give you a problem, and then I'll give you the advice sentence. So, for example, if I said, I have a fever. I have a fever. So my head is very hot. Maybe my temperature is like 39.5. Or if you're doing Fahrenheit, it's like 99 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a very high temperature. So a good advice sentence would be, if I were you, I would go to the doctor. Okay, one more time. If I were you, I'd go to the doctor. Now, if you notice the second time, I actually shortened I would. Instead of I would, I said I'd. So if I were you, I'd go to the doctor. Now, this is just a great way to shorten our sentence and to sound more fluent. So when you're speaking, try to contract those two words. Okay, so now that we've made a sentence, let's try speaking. Let's do a speaking practice. In this next part, I'll read black, you read red. I have a fever. Okay, very good. Let's try one more. Okay, this time, again, I'll read black, you read red, but this time you'll begin. If I were you, I'd practice in front of the mirror. Okay, so I hope you practice. I hope you spoke along. This is a really good chance to actually practice your speaking and your fluency. All right, now is also a great time for me to ask you, if you like this video so far, if you think it's useful and you're learning something, please subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. The next part of this lesson is the active part of the lesson. This is where you get to make sentences. And we're going to do it a little bit different this time. We're going to make some of the situations easy, and then we're going to get a little bit more difficult as we go along. So in this active part, what I will do is I will give you a situation, and I want you to give me advice. I want you to make a sentence saying, if I were you, I would. And then, of course, follow it with a verb. In the first three, I will give you a hint. I'll put a picture up here and use that picture to give me advice. But in the last two, I'm not going to put any picture up here. I want you to give me your original advice, your original answer. So just think and give me your advice. Now remember, at any time during this video, you can pause. Pausing will give you some time to think, and then unpause it and speak your answer. Okay, situation number one. I have a very big test tomorrow, a huge test. It's very important. Please give me some advice. All right, so make sure you look at the picture, use that picture to give me advice. All right, my sentence using this picture would be, if I were you, I'd study. Okay, so one more time. If I were you, I'd study. Now, of course, we can make this sentence more difficult, more complex. I could say, if I were you, I'd study hard. If I were you, I'd study all night. So we can always make our answers longer. All right, situation number two. I really want to go on a vacation and just relax. I don't want to do anything, like no sightseeing, no shopping, just relax. If you were me, what would you do? Please give me some advice. Look at the picture and give me some advice. All right, so if I look at that picture, it looks like a beach. When I think beach, I think Hawaii. Maybe other people are thinking other beaches, maybe Bali, maybe it's Thailand, but I think Hawaii. So my answer would be, if I were you, I'd go to Hawaii. Right? So one more time. If I were you, I'd go to Hawaii. Situation number three. I have a terrible headache. Now, before we get into the advice, terrible in this situation, terrible means very bad. Very bad. Okay, so I have a terrible headache. Please give me some advice. Look at the picture and make a sentence. All right, so I see a picture of aspirin. So my sentence would be, if I were you, I'd take some aspirin. If I were you, I'd take some aspirin. Now, whenever we are talking about medicine, we always use the verb take. So take some aspirin, take some medicine. Right? It's always take. So try to remember that. Okay, situation number 4. Now, in this situation, I am not going to give you a picture. I'm not going to give you a hint. So I'd like you to think of your own advice. So if you need time to think, just pause the video. Pause the video, think, and then unpause it, and then speak your answer. After you speak your answer, leave it down in the comment section as well, because I will check to see if your grammar is right and if you've made a good advice sentence. Okay, so in this situation, I am starving. I'm starving. And I don't want to cook. All right, so I'm starving. Starving means very hungry. Very hungry. So I'm starving and I don't want to cook. I don't want to cook. I'm very lazy today. I don't want to cook. So what should I do? Please give me some advice. All right, so for me, if this were me, my answer would be, if I were you, I'd eat out. Or maybe, if I were you, I'd order in. All right, so one was eat out. That means you go to a restaurant. The other one is order in. That means you're going to call a restaurant and tell them to bring the food to your house. Right? So eat out, you go to a restaurant, order in. The food comes to your house. Number five, in this situation, again, there will be no hint, no picture. So please give me your idea. In this situation, I can't fall asleep. I can't fall asleep. I want to sleep. You know, it's very late. It's 1 a.m. I want to sleep, but I can't sleep. What should I do? Please give me some advice. Okay, so my answer, this one's kind of an interesting one, but my answer would be, if I were you, I'd drink warm milk. Now, when I was a kid, my mom would always say to me that, you know, if you can't sleep, drink warm milk. It will make you sleepy. I'm pretty sure that doesn't work, but that's what my mom told me, so that's what I do. So my advice to you in this situation is, if I were you, I'd drink some warm milk. Now remember, if you have a different answer, make sure you leave it down in the comment section and I will check it. I would actually be really curious to see what your answer is, because sometimes I have trouble sleeping. I drink too much coffee or too many energy drinks. So let me know what your advice is for me in this situation. And if you liked these situations, if you think this was helpful for your speaking, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. I'm always trying to post as many videos as I can, so hitting that notification bell will let you know when I post the next one. Now, again, if you have any questions about this video, make sure you leave them down below. And if you have any lesson requests, leave those down there as well. All right, so until the next lesson, see ya. Thank you very much for watching today's lesson. Today we practiced giving advice. We gave advanced advice sentences. If you think this lesson was useful, please subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. Until that next lesson, see ya.